Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a review on the newest foundation from NARS. This is the NARS All Day Luminous Weightless Foundation. Do apologize if there's a lot of glare on my glasses. I just needed to take a break from the contacts. But I really wanted to get this review out for you guys, and I'll kind of explain why here in a second. But I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. It's been very popular recently on YouTube. There's been so many different videos talking about it. And so I might just be beating a dead horse here, or you might find this kind of interesting. Like I said, newest foundation from NARS. What this foundation is it's one of those serum kind of foundations that you're only supposed to need like one pump or one drop of, that's supposed to give you really flawless coverage, feel lightweight on the skin, work on all different skin types. It's just supposed to be that magical, perfecting, does it all kind of a foundation that's lightweight yet full coverage and looks good on everyone. Which I think is a very tough bracket to fill, because that is basically hitting so many different things for so many different people, and everybody has different skin types, and I think that it's a lot of claims to put on one product. This foundation does retail for $48, which is insane. A foundation that's almost $50 for me, I have super high expectations of. If I am going to spend $50 on a foundation, I want it to work. I want it to be absolutely perfect, and I don't really want to have one gripe about it, just because I have some foundations that are cheaper that I really don't have any gripes about that I love. So for me, this foundation has to be perfect. I got it in the shade Light 3, which is called Gobi, and I would say that it's a perfect match for my MAC NC20 kind of skin tone. I'm light, but I'm not the fairest of the fair, and I have pretty strong yellow undertones, and this is a very good match for me. I would say it's maybe just like a tad bit on the light side, but honestly, once I put on my bronzer and my blush, it blends in perfectly, and I'm sure you guys can see, it's not like my neck is really darker than my face. I just tend to like a little bit more warmth to my face, if that makes sense. What NARS claims this to be is a weightless 16-hour oil-free foundation that reaches an extraordinary level of perfection with ultra lightweight, complete coverage, and a uniquely fluid, silky feel. It's supposed to blend easily for an all-day natural luminous finish, non-comedogenic, dermatologist tested, formulated without oil, alcohol, or fragrance, and they claim that you only need to use one pump of this. Now, all these claims are sounding kind of similar. It's because, like I mentioned, this has kind of been the trend with foundations recently. Tarte just released one. I think Bare Minerals kind of started a lot of it with their serum, what is it called, Bare Skin foundation, which I did do a review on a while ago when it first came out, and I was very like in the middle with that foundation. It was great for days when my skin was not too oily but not too dry. I didn't need a whole lot of coverage. It was just kind of like a good everyday foundation, but most of the time my skin isn't that perfect. Most of the time I do need the coverage. My skin is dry in some areas, it's oily in some areas, and so I ended up returning that foundation because I just found I wasn't using it enough. While on the days that it looked good, it looked really good and I really liked it. On the days it looked bad, it looked really bad and I didn't like it. And there's just that, you know, big of a trade-off. I just couldn't do it anymore. So when this came out, I was interested, and when I first purchased this, I didn't even know that it was one of those serum foundations until I got it home, and I was like, this texture is really similar to that Bare Skin texture, and I did some more research on it and found that it is a serum foundation, or kind of has that same idea. It does come with a pump, which is super nice, because if you guys have experience with other NARS foundations, you know that they don't come with a pump, which is super stupid because it's so expensive, and I just can't imagine it costs that much more to throw a pump on there, and I'm sure most of us would even pay a little bit extra for the pump. So while this foundation is more expensive than NARS Sheer Glow, you are getting a pump. I don't know if it's worth the price difference, but you know, it is nice that they have one on here, especially with this kind of a formula. This formula is so thin. It's just got like a slightly thicker texture than water. This is one of those foundations you really have to shake up, and I might just be quiet so you guys can hear what it sounds like. I don't know if that's coming across or not, but it is literally just like, I mean, like I said, a little bit thicker than water. Very thin consistency, which is one thing that I do like about it, because it feels very lightweight on the skin. It doesn't really feel like I'm wearing a whole lot of foundation when I wear this. But that is kind of where the good things for me end. This foundation and this kind of a foundation formulation just does not love my skin. And it's hard because I've seen other reviews where people just rave about this. They say it looks good on their dry spots, they say it looks good in their oily areas, and I just don't get it because for me, I do have legitimately dry spots in my skin. I, as you guys know, recently have been experiencing a lot of bad breakouts, and when you are using acne medication on top of those breakouts, it does dry out spots of your skin. So right now around my nose is very dry. Of course, any little spot I do have is dry, but yeah, my T-zone in general is a bit oily just because throughout the day I do produce a lot of natural oils. I wouldn't say that I'm a very, very oily skin type. I'm just kind of that, you know, true combination skin type, but I do notice getting oily, you know, around this area. So I don't know. Again, the same things that I had to say about the bare skin kind of apply to this. I think a big thing for me with the oily stuff is that this foundation claims to wear for 16 hours, and I just don't see that. For me, it's not transfer resistant at all. I feel like whenever I scrape my face up against something, if I happen to touch it, I'm always getting little bits of foundation on my fingers. And then I find that in my oily areas, it doesn't necessarily like move or completely disappear. It just starts to look a little bit funky, and that's when it starts to feel heavy because I can feel the oil and the foundation and they just kind of mix together, and I just don't like that feeling on my skin. I much more prefer something like the Estee Lauder Double Wear, where when I do tend to get oily, it's like that foundation just stops it and goes, nope, you are not breaking through this. And so I don't feel the mix of foundation and oil. I just feel the foundation, which obviously this kind of texture is going to be a lot lighter than the Estee Lauder Double Wear, but throughout the day I find that I like the feeling of the Estee Lauder Double Wear way more than this. The other thing about this, on my dry spots, it just clings to them. It's not as bad as the bare skin. I will say that I think that this is everything the bare skin wanted to be. I still don't think it's perfect, but I think that this is leaps and bounds better than the bare skin just because it does hold up a little bit more in my oily areas than the bare skin, and it doesn't look as dry in my dry areas as the bare skin did. So if you're debating between the two, I think that this is the much better option. But for my skin type, and unless I think you have like really good normal skin, I just don't feel like this formulation is going to be great for you. And maybe that's just me because like I said, almost every other review I've seen of this, a lot of people like it. I just can't justify the price and what I get out of it, especially compared to something like the Estee Lauder Double Wear, which as you guys know recently has been my absolute favorite. That just looks so nice on the skin. The other thing with this is, while it is full coverage, I just find that when it goes on my face, it just starts to sheer out a lot. And I've tried applying this with a brush, I've tried using my fingers, and I've tried using a sponge. I definitely like the Beauty Blender and then a brush the most. I particularly like a stippling brush with this foundation. I just feel like it really helps to blend the foundation without shearing it out as much. I would definitely suggest not using your fingers. That's what NARS suggests with this. I don't get that because I think that it really makes it sheer. Like it almost, when I applied this first with my fingers, I was like, where is my coverage? And I just really did not like the overall effect. I do use the Beauty Blender most. I just think it's the easiest method of application, and I think I get the best result out of it. As for the one pump claim, I do think that's actually kind of true because one pump does cover like pretty much your entire face. It's not like one pump and it's like, oh, I got a cheek done, but I have all this other face area that it hasn't even touched yet. You can really spread it and make it cover your entire face. But the thing with that though is I think that you're kind of then lacking a little bit in the coverage department, and this foundation does not build very well. I find that if I apply a layer and I try to go back in with another layer, it just looks very dry, it looks a little bit cakey, and it's definitely one of those foundations that I think needs one layer and that's it. If you try to layer it up more, it's just going to look worse and worse and worse. I think this foundation is good for somebody who doesn't have too many dry areas, doesn't have a huge problem with oil, or maybe if you are a bit oily, you know, using a primer and using a really good setting powder, I do think you can really like this. I just feel like for people who are at all dry, you're going to find that this does cling to your dry areas. And I think for people who are very oily, you might be a little bit bummed out by the 16-hour wear claim, because while it doesn't claim to be oil controlling necessarily, when you see something like it wears for 16 hours, in my mind, I just kind of assume that it's going to help to control my oil a little bit, just because oil is what makes foundation break down and what makes it not wear as nicely most of the time. Of course, sweat, humidity, that kind of stuff too plays a role, but I think oil for most people is the biggest factor in wear time with their foundations. So the reason I wanted to get a review up on this is because I will be returning this. I just, you know, for me, the Estee Lauder Double Wear is around $30. It works so much better for my skin type. Over my dry spots, it really does not look dry, and over my oily areas, it just really controls them, and for me, that is the perfect foundation. Plus, I feel like for whatever reason, I just get a lot more coverage out of that than I do this, and for $50, I just don't like this foundation enough to continue to use it. I don't like the way throughout the day it starts to make my skin feel, and I don't like too how I can only apply one layer, and I still feel like a lot of my acne scars are showing through. With the Estee Lauder Double Wear, one layer is good enough to cover everything, and I really like that about it. But anyway, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you found it helpful. If you guys have any other questions, please let me know. Of course, if you guys have tried this foundation and you love it, I am not trying to disregard your opinion, and I'm not trying to bash one of your favorite products at all. I'm just letting people out there who maybe have a similar skin type to me or have similar skin concerns as I do know that this may not work as well for you. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.